Tim. How's it going?
Good, sir. Nice to meet you.
Good to meet you too. Wow, you have a very nice studio there. Look at that.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, we the pandemic of everything that's occurred and working from home, we started that process pretty early and happen to have a little music studio. I have two young girls, 11 and 14, that we do all sorts of fun little musical things together, and it's just kind of a room for us to pretend and be creative and have all sorts of fun. So yeah,
Fantastic. Look at that. I mean, you got everything there. You got
here
the
we go.
you got a piano, guitars. You got a couch. I love it.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot of
Soundproof
fun,
too.
and it's super quiet, soundproof a little bit. So I actually worked really well to put the desk here and work through. And it works really good for Zoom calls because Zoom fatigue really comes from poor audio, in
Yeah.
my opinion. So getting a high quality sort of bookshelf speaker and then using this mic to send some
Mhm.
some better higher quality
Yeah.
audio back really helps a lot. So
Yeah, that's a pretty
I
badass
spend
mic. I've got one of those. I've got one of these blue microphones.
for sure.
Just
Yeah.
out of shot. It's not
Yeah.
bad. It's good. It's not as good as yours. I mean, are you a musician that you do that for fun or?
Yeah. Just it's call it a closet musician, maybe. Just just enjoy. I can play all this stuff, but never really tried to make a career out of it. It's just been a real strong hobby, and honestly, it's a little bit of therapy too, because it's just it's a good unwinding. I Sometimes I just grab a guitar, strum on a little bit in between music meetings, if I have a few meetings,
Nice.
a little pace, just to kind of mental break. So yeah, have
Very
fun.
cool. Very cool. Well, my oldest is a musician. He's a pianist, and it's a tough
Nice.
life.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
but I'm sure I never had the passion to really take it other than a hobby, and I just like to noodle and play a few songs. But yeah, it's tough business, very
yeah.
tough
Yeah,
business.
it's,
Yep.
it's funny because people enjoy music so much, they get so much out of it. It seems like there's some kind of weird disconnect between the value that we get out of music and how much we're willing to pay for music. It's like if those were a
Mm,
little more equal, then
that's interesting. Yeah, and I've never taken that lens before, so I'm sure it's got to be hard. The term "starving musician," I guess, is there for a reason, right?
yeah, exactly. It's
Yeah,
really
yeah, interesting.
awesome. So let's go a little. Tell me a little about yourself and your organization and what you're passionate about. We'll go from there.
Yeah. So my background, I've been lucky enough to be with Choice. Choice Financial Group is the legal entity. Been lucky enough to be with them for 17 years.
Wow.
Yeah, and kind of was a consultant right kind of out of college, and so was able to Choice is one of our customers, and I was a pure IT specialist, if you will,
Hmm.
and Choice was one of our customers, like I was saying, and kind of really there was a good fit there. I loved working with the Choice team, what they were all about. So we ended up, making it permanent, and I was the chief technology officer, but it was really just the first full IT person that they had in the organization, and did everything from take help desk calls to set up the network to everything in between. And I think what I learned through that process the first few years was got a chance to really start to understand the business through the lens of technology,
Hmm.
and very curious person. So I was asking a bunch of questions. Well, I'm curious about this, and so that grew to kind of an operational lead, and was able to take some operational leadership, and then that grew to other. I mean, I've gotten to bounce all over the organization, largely been behind the scenes work, optimizing internal employee processes, and trying to learn the business through the way. Last 4 or 5 years, it's been more of a how can we take the behind the scenes work that talented industry people are doing, and make them sort of the future of the organization. So we've gotten really into the fintech side of things here, as a business, and I'm leading the effort of turning that into revenue for the organization. And so we're kind of in the banking as a service model. We offer that out to customers, and we have a great list of partners that we're working with globally, and it's been a lot of fun taking software technology and really the world's changed so much. We can certainly go down that rabbit hole anytime, but it's fastly changing. It's a rapid fintech disruptor sort of kind of process, and so we got involved in it earlier. It was really a uh, start out of frustration
Hmm.
for me personally. I think I was overseeing marketing and to figure out, well, how we could differentiate our brand anyway here. And we're a strong community bank, regional bank in Midwest, based out of North Dakota. We have presence, traditionally all over North Dakota and into Minnesota, but we've been um, in the HSA business, having customers in all 50 states. So we were pretty comfortable with thinking bigger anyway. And
Hmm.
so, I got invited to be an advisor for the software company that we're using as a bank to run the bank.
Nice.
Super fun. Go there, and share your ideas, thoughts. But I stopped going to the meetings just simply because the pace was so slow. I couldn't, you could share an idea and then their roadmap based off the pace that they operated at was 3 to 5 years before you'd see
Right.
anything really come into fruition. And I just sort of thought, man, that's kind of a waste of my time. It's kind of a waste of my organization's time. That's, paying me my salary. So I took a call from a company out of Silicon Valley because of our HSA history. And they were a strong idea company. I always say they had an idea and a whiteboard, and we provided the whiteboard basically. And they came to see us. We put something together. I at the time was hiring someone out of Citigroup out of Jacksonville, Florida.
Oh yeah.
Kind of was, yeah, I was kind of seeing this. So the timing was really good. And he had a complete new plate. And I said, well, you got your first assignment, right? Your first project is to figure out how we're going to integrate this into our banking software.
Mm.
And in 3 months, they were going through Y Combinator, the partner,
Oh, nice.
and we had a working debit card and with their logo on it in 3 months. I mean, it was
Wow.
incredible.
See, that's the kind of the speed you should be moving at. I mean, most financial
Yeah.
companies are like, it's like when you're telling me that years. When I hear the word years, I'm thinking, oh my god, like, are you living in the 21st century? Like we can't do anything in years. It's almost impossible. So are you guys? How long have you been around? I mean, and you've been you're a small bank, so you can be more nimble than a typical financial services company.
Well, it's an interesting journey. We've been around since 2001. It was three community banks independently becoming one.
Hmm.
Let's combine the assets and let's become one. So Choice Financial Group was born in 2001. Uh, First 15 years of the journey, maybe 13 years, were organic growth. Um, De novo, go into a market, do the traditional brick and mortar.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it
and
was all
back then
traditional.
it's how it all
Right.
worked, right? Yeah, and so then we got into the acquisitional sort of playbook and started becoming a good partner for acquisitions. And
Hmm.
really, our strength there was to find organizations that maybe needed a little bit of help in terms of growth, and maybe partnering was better than trying to grow it themselves. That makes sense. So we became a partner there. Really proud of the fact that we never laid anybody off in three acquisitions. We always absorbed it. And so that was a nice reputational piece to the growth of the fact that, hey, we'll have a job for you here and may not be exactly what you're doing, but it's really important for us to make sure that we're a great partner in that case.
Not a lot of banks can say that anymore, right? I mean, look
Yeah,
at what's happening with Wells Fargo and some of those other banks. It's just things are different, very different.
they are exactly. And so to your question, what makes us, allows us to do this? What I heard nimble, right? I heard what are we smaller? Are we nimble? I think that's part of it. Um, I don't think we should be ignoring the fact that the teams that we have and we have a pretty strong entrepreneurial background. All of us really do. Is um, So honestly, it was just more, hey, I'm frustrated at the pace and I have this idea. I want to go try this. Let's take sort of a startup mentality. We were a 2-person shop for quite some time. I had a ton of other responsibilities that I was also accountable to. And it wasn't until 2 years ago when we, we as an organization said, let's go have you focus on this.
Mm-hmm.
And so, we had enough momentum behind us. We just needed better clarity and optics into the business unit that we were trying to produce, to the point where, we made a business case, and it's not like you had to shout it from the rooftops. It was the growth was happening. We had the partnerships in place. Uh, it was more just, how do you measure it? How do you provide the clarity internally to show that it is a sustainable sort of path forward. And so we created a new brand called Choice Fin for fintech, just a wordplay, really new entity there. So 2 brands with 1 balance sheet, and we're running Choice Fin independently of Choice Bank, but there's obviously shared resources and teams that are helping it all get done. But it's been a really good test in terms of just getting you got to do it at the right pace, the right buy-in, the right, from all levels of the organization. So pretty cool to be able
Yeah. So
to.
I have a question. I have a
Yeah.
question on that. So is it because you were small? Is that why you're able to get leadership to help you move forward quickly? Because in a lot of these other financial institutions, it's like, okay, we got to move slow. We have all these roadblocks in our way. We have compliance issues. We have privacy issues. We have XXX issues. It takes us 18 months to do anything. Is it because you're small, or was your leadership more open-minded? What was the secret sauce that allowed you to innovate quickly?
It's a great question. I think I would answer that we took a risk on a partner, and the partner took a risk on us, and a chance to say, I have built-in product demand. I have a customer willing to pay us for our services.
Mm-hmm.
And so it wasn't an initial idea as much as it was, hey, we're going to do this. We have the partner already lined up. They want to do it with us, and we're going to go ahead and try this.
Right. So the
And
opportunity came along, and you jumped at it, because most companies say, no, that's too risky for us.
mhm. Yeah, it might be.
Mm-hmm.
I guess we didn't necessarily. I had the necessary buy-in at the time because it wasn't this massive overhaul.
Right.
It was, let's start small, and then let's see if we can have something that's at least minimal viable product. I guess we took the lesson from, maybe my answer to you, Chris, which I'm not really answering very well because I've never really been asked it that way.
Okay.
Is we just felt, let's just take the startup mentality and try this, and let's see if we can find something that might be the future of banking. And that's honestly how strong we feel the belief is of this. Is this could be absolutely what banking as a whole industry might end up having to, especially if you're a smaller, and when I say smaller, under 10 billion, I think that's the advantage we have through Frank Dodd and all the changes, the regulation there. We have a competitive advantage there for now. And revenue is through interchange is definitely one of the models of revenue that we use. It's I think we just did it. We didn't really try to sell it. We just did it. We did one as a leadership team, executive team. Then we went to the board, showed kind of what we're doing. That looks a little bit different. Of course, it's going to be, I didn't have the overwhelming, resounding resources or support to necessarily go all in on this. So we just did it in a methodical, careful, risk-based approach, I guess. Our first one was an HSA. We didn't go sign a company that we didn't know, or a customer that we weren't trying to serve ourselves. it was an HSA customer. We were pretty comfortable with that. So, hey, it's not scaling very fast, so let's try to do this and scale the business and do
Mhm.
it faster that way. So it really is an interesting partnership, because if you look at it, a fintech company is really, really good at understanding who their customer is. They do a fantastic job of focusing on experience for their customer through digital resources. And then we get to do all the things that, quite frankly, I'm not sure they want to do. Like, if
Right.
it's the regulatory relationships, the
Yeah.
oversight,
All the
um,
boring stuff that's not really
kind of,
interesting to.
yeah, it's not the fun stuff, but it's the absolute
Yeah.
necessary thing. And that's
Oh
why
yeah.
the partnership model works really well, because it allows each organization to do what they really do best. And really, it was a mentality for us that, no, well, we don't necessarily have to have just one pie. We can have multiple pies, multiple partnerships, and maybe our services are a small piece of each pie, as opposed to trying to, create an entire pie on our own. I don't know. I'm an analogy guy, so that's why I tend to think of it that way right now.
And you're making me hungry, so that's good. We talk about, so so did you, is the partner you're talking about, did you find a partner, or did you spin off? Like you said, there's a fintech side of your company, and there's a financial services side of your company. Did the fintech was a spin-off, or did you absorb somebody? How did that work?
Spin-off. So we ended
Okay.
up at, we were going about it methodically for 3 years. And then we thought, hey, if we can't, we have to have our own P&L. I want to make this and our CEO at the time, still very much today, was, I think the first challenge is, let's go show that we can make this a business.
Yeah.
And then we can go into all sorts of other directions. But let's first make sure we can show that this is approving as fast, as long as you can, in a very rapid changing industry. Let's make this something that is sustainable as much as we can. And so, one partner grew to two. It's word of mouth industry. Two partners grew to four grew into six. And now we have partners that are, I was just really humbled by it, that our word of mouth are kind of what we're trying to do, and serve those partners. That's what we really think of it as. Hey, we really like your idea. We really like your product market fit. Let's go ahead and do the partnership, because I think what you have is different than what others are not seeing. And so let's go help enable that. So yes, spin-off. Yes, it really was at that point. I felt a lot of resistance. Well, should we be doing this? Is this risky? Man, I don't know if this is for us.
Right.
And, how do we really even know, because we're not measuring this? And so, I kind of just said, well, then let's go. I studied S curves. I don't know if you're familiar with an S curve, but an S curve is a natural progression of any idea. It starts off, it gains traction, and then it kind of flattens out, maybe even falls.
Yep.
And so I was trying to disrupt our own S curve of traditional banking. And for me, it was the light bulb moment. Well, let's just go start a new one, as opposed to trying to put all this effort into disrupting our own model. Let's go create a new one. We'll go out on an island for a while, and we'll figure this out. And so that was really, our timing was the end of 2019 into 2020 when we started doing that. And now all of a sudden you're getting more optics and more visibility into, is it really working? Is it not, from a financial perspective? Added a couple more resources, and 2020 was a really interesting year for many different reasons. But in the world of fintech, collectively, it's just exploding, right?
Yeah.
And software is eating the world. It's just taking over.
Yeah. So would you
And
say that, so
yeah.
what kind of unique things are you able to deliver through Choice Fin that you weren't able to do before?
Well, Choice Fin allowed us, we started building our own software interface level. So really what we found in the niche, and again, I just think that the way we went about it is listen to our partner. What do you need? We'll go build it. Next partner comes, what do you need? We'll go build it.
Yeah.
And so through that process, you start seeing, well, hey, there's some repeatable tasks and processes here. But what we have done is we've created our own software layer that interfaces with our fintech partners in a way that's modern, and
Mm-hmm.
then has to go back and interface into systems that is not modern. And I'll just say it that way. I mean, it's very,
Right.
very legacy.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have this sort of, yeah, we've gotten pretty good about listening to our partners, and then being able to make it happen in a way that's today's tech, not 1980s, where
Right.
most of this stuff
So
is.
underneath it all, there might be some of that, but you've built this really like easy to use modern layer on top of that, that allows them to use your kind of services, yeah,
Yep.
a lot more effortlessly
Right.
in a more modern way. So
Yep.
if I'm a software developer, you basically created a platform and you've published that platform to these other vendors who can come along and build whatever they want on top of it.
Correct.
Very
Yep.
cool. Very cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
So would you say that tell me a little bit about how how does innovation sort of start within your organization? Do you do like grassroots? Does your leadership say, hey, this is what we're going to do next? Or I mean, do you do a lot of design thinking? Do you do customer workshops? How do you find the next big thing that you guys are going to work on?
I don't think we have a real strong answer there. We're a pretty good idea company.
Mhm.
It's a matter of testing those ideas and in combination with listening to what the market is wanting. And for us in this space today, when we have partners serving their audience or their customers, they are doing their product testing and listening to their customers, which then in turn, it's a B2B play for us in essence, that they're doing product market fit to what their customers are looking for. And then, well, what systems do we need to be able to make work? Um, the simplest way I could put it is in two forms. We're not really reinventing banking. We're just changing the delivery model and recognizing that the delivery is changing. You know, does it have to be your brand that delivers the ACH file, or can you partner with another company, be in the packing and shipping industry of digital, data really is what we're doing.
Yeah.
And then be proud that you're serving this other organization that ultimately is the brand to the customer. And
Yeah.
that's really what we got comfortable with. So um it's a combination of, hey, we're thinking of this, how does this strategically fit with our partners? um a lot of the times it's us kind of listening. They're the innovation ideas more so than we are, but we like to have the partnership back and forth. So um a lot of our innovation just comes from honestly listening,
Hmm.
which there's two trains of thought on that, but typically it works best when you listen, I guess, to the right audience. Yep.
How would you say? So it sounds like basically you've taken like a vertical where the bank is like, oh, here's the front end and the back, in the middle layer and the back end. That was basically typical monolithic bank, and you've basically split it up so somebody else can be the front end, you could be the middle layer or the back end or whatever. And it's like even though you're not facing your brand to the world, you're still taking a piece of the action
Mhm.
behind all that, and you're letting other people handling that piece.
That's accurate. Yep.
Mhm.
That's 100%
Cool.
what we're all about. Yep. And
Awesome.
again, we're not saying yes to every program. We really find we tend to work best with companies that are really serving a greater purpose.
Mhm.
If you look at some of our partners, really were pioneering the early payday. So their goal was to see if they could allow their customer base to get paid on a Wednesday instead of Friday.
Right.
Um, and I know that's becoming a little bit more common now. But that was pretty early when we were doing that with them. And to their credit, they saw a need. Um, we worked collectively to try to make that happen. It's both. It takes both to make it happen.
Mhm.
It was part of our our solutions that we're able to do it. So no, but it's really cool to be able to do something that innovative, right? Especially at a time where no one was really doing it.
Yeah.
So
Well, what do you
yeah,
think of these initiatives to try and do a daily payday, where they just basically split everything up and then you just get dropped? I think McDonald's is testing
yeah,
that. Have you heard about that? What are your
yes.
thoughts there?
Yeah, well, I even heard of a company. I had conversations a few years ago. They were on this too, where shift working or restaurants where you have people in and out, where not only could you have an app base where, hey, here's some hours and whoever wants to work it can work it. And it was sort of this whatever works for me sort of
Yeah.
kind of self-serving working hours. It was really incredible. And
Mhm.
then when you're done, you were paid instantly
Yeah.
like that, and you know, I think the world's going to go that way because why hold it? Why this, why does it take so long when you're in the world of I want it now and I push a button and I get it instantly? That's going to influence other industries to that same standard. So I'm a Netflix user and I see a movie and I just tap my button on my phone and I have instant gratification.
That's right.
We've now set the bar for other industries to be able to deliver that too. And really, when you think about it, money is it's invisible.
Hmm.
It's it can be converted to paper currency, but it's not as if banking is in this world of um, delivering physical products and services, right? And
Well,
even
especially nowadays when
yeah,
everything's contactless and everything is completely different now. I mean, have you found that? I find that these sort of crises have really caused a lot of disruption to actually push things forward. Sort of things that were going to take a while to roll through are now accelerating. So, what are you seeing as the big changes in banking due to COVID and pandemics?
well, I think the obvious is adoption of using the products and services that were there first and
Hmm.
foremost. I mean, mobile banking, remote deposit, take a picture of your check, send it to the bank as opposed to going physically there those have been there for, I mean, you tell me, 5 years at least, maybe
Yeah,
longer.
yeah,
Whatever the date is, it escapes me, but the the resistance of using it was always there for people that, well, I'm just in this habit. I prefer to go see the person and physically hand the check. Well, now you have an outside reason to not go there. That's
mhm,
truly whether you one whatever, if you're strong about, if you have uh if you have reasons that you do not want to be there in public going into a branch during that time, and I think that time is going to continue. Behavior shifts are really, it's long enough of a behavior shift where it's going to be permanent.
yeah.
And so it's no longer just a convenience, it's kind of turned into a necessity. And the acceleration of adoption is really what's incredible through
Hmm.
this process. So you have, I think, adoption of existing technology, which then gets people more comfortable to look at newer technology and getting even more adaptable to that. So I just think the acceleration through COVID has really been transformational in terms of just understanding that, getting people comfortable using technology where maybe they were resistant. You're always going to have your early adopters, and
Yeah.
this is pushing everybody to the point where,
Do you think? Do you
yeah,
think we'll ever get to the point where banking is fully remote? Like you'll never, because I mean, there's still situations where you've got to do a loan application, you got to do mortgage application. There's still situations, or notaries, for example, still situations where you need to be face to face with somebody. Do you think we'll ever get to the point where you can actually do, authentication and security and all these things without actually being in the same room?
I think we're already there, to be honest. So
Really? It's
yeah,
probably
I
more
think,
secure now doing it
well,
remotely than it is in person.
I think that you're asking an interesting question there. I think if the mindset would be there, we could solve that. I mean, I think if there is not companies already thinking about solving some of those face-to-face have tos, to do we really need to why don't we just digitize that process as well? Then yeah, I mean, mortgages are going digital. It's more the title companies that maybe need to take that next step.
Mhm.
And so, you know, I refinanced my home and buying a cabin here, and I know I'm going to be sitting, well, at least that's the way it was 6 months ago. You sit in the driving in the parking lot, your car's running, and they hand you the papers and you sign them in your car, and here you go. You know, that process will then lead to a different process, which someone's going to figure out how to digitize that process. So
Yep.
I think this is face to face now. I think that this isn't necessarily in person, but it's as close to in person as we're going to get. And I actually, in some ways, think that this is maybe even as or more effective as in person. I don't check my phone as regularly when I'm on a Zoom call. It's more respectful to
Yeah.
keep the person in front of you and keep your attention to them. For whatever reason, when I'm in person, I have this sort of reluctancy to check phones and be more distracted when I'm actually in person. So kind of interesting. There's kind of two forms of ourselves, isn't there? There's this physical, and then there's this digital version of ourselves, and
Yeah. Well,
they're
it's really
the
interesting you
same.
should say that,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
it's almost like there's a different level of intimacy when you're doing it through a connection. Like, you know how it's like on the internet, people will say things to each other on the internet they would never say to each
correct.
other face to face. It's almost like, you know, a lot of the filters are gone, or at least minimized. And you do actually probably have a much more honest conversation with somebody through this than you would in person, because you're like, oh, is this guy gonna like hit me or something? Or I don't know what kind of
Hmm.
reaction they're gonna have. But you know what I'm saying is like, it's like this interface has allowed us to be, I think, more real with each other almost.
Authentic, right? Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
and maybe part of that is because there isn't this two versions of ourselves. You know, there isn't a work version of you or a personal life version of you. It's we've been forced into the combined view,
Yep.
and I have found more vulnerable, more authentic conversations through this process than I've had in the traditional work world.
Hmm.
I've had barking dog interruptions and kids walking in the background, and you know, at first it was a little everyone was apologetic to it, and now I mean, we we got one guy who's got this precious little guy, and he's climbing all over him, and that's okay, cool. You know, it's just no problem. I've had my dogs do a barking session with the other dogs that the other person I was talking to. So I was like, are dogs talking to each other? Are they actually doing their own Zoom call now?
The
It was
dogs are having their own Zoom call.
yeah, exactly. So I mean, all these sort of real authentic moments have happened, and I think it was a time when we were all very vulnerable, right, in terms of what the world looked like. I mean, a year ago it was pretty scary. I mean, we're almost approaching 1 year since it really became what it is today, and
Yeah.
even a little bit worse there, right? So um you know, you always have to look at the opportunity within, and it's hard for, I mean, right, there's always an opportunity, and it may not be the greatest opportunity, but it is something there. And I think the people that are figuring it out are the ones that are making it work, right? They're working around situations. They're maybe pivoting or accelerating their business plans to digital faster than they maybe
Yeah.
planned a year ago. I like when I see really creative, you know, here in North Dakota, we have restaurants, and there for a while uh, it was not, was it a shutdown? I think there was some shutdown. Every state was a little bit handled differently.
Hmm.
So they did these like igloos, you know, like they were just like plastic igloos, and they
Oh,
put
cool.
tables outside and heated them, and it was super fun. But you know, here you've got individuals that are owning restaurants and trying to find ways to make it work. And that was, you know, you can't but not embrace that, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. And
Oh yeah, no, you're right. I think
yeah,
basically everything is going to virtualize or digitize. I mean, you're going to have, I mean, what's going to happen to these experience restaurants, right? That are high end, you know, come in here, there's nice music, the servers are nice, you know, get high end food. How are you going to translate that And, some of the innovations have come out of that. We were going to ship the whole thing to you, and have somebody,
Yeah.
just ship the whole experience. So it's interesting that you're going to see all of these innovative new things coming out of it, but it really is virtualization of these businesses that were never virtualized before. Because if you're just selling stuff online, you can easily, this hasn't affected you at all, but all of these, personal services and experience services, they definitely have to change, but some of those even change for the better.
I
Right?
agree. I had one that was just, as you were describing that one that stood out. My wife said, "Hey, there's this wine tasting / meal kit that a local company here in our hometown came up with this concept." I'm like, "That sounds kind of cool. How
Yeah.
are we?" Well, it's a Zoom call. I'm like, "Oh, let's do it." I'm so used to doing Zoom all day. Let's try it. So you get your kit, 2 bottles of wine. I didn't know what to expect. It was really fun. I had a rep from the vineyard that was talking about, how long the vineyards have been there and where they're located and how this one paired up nicely with the food we were eating. And I don't know if I would have asked the questions that I asked. I was like, "Hey, can you help me understand, like, how am I supposed to honestly drink the wine? Am I supposed to let it go all over? Am I supposed to isolate it?"
Right.
We want to start and ask, it wasn't even really about the specific wine. It was just these questions about just wine enthusiast sharing kind of thought. It was really fun. And so
Mhm.
to your point, the companies that are looking looking for those opportunities are that's what it's gonna take to transform and continue. And maybe what got you to a certain point isn't always going to be what continues to kind of move it forward. And you can take
Yeah.
the principles and the values, hopefully principles, values, missions, visions, all those things. If they're done well, they should never change. It's just, how are we going to deliver that experience differently? If
Yeah.
our experiences deliver this, then how are we going to do that through this channel?
Yeah.
It's the
Well, if you ask
blockbuster
me,
model.
the ideal thing is if we started basically just eliminating any kind of travel for, like, essential travel for work, right? And the only time you traveled was if you wanted to do it for enjoyment, right? If you wanted to,
Mhm.
see a show or whatever. If we could just eliminate the whole commuting concept, where somebody has to, like, go from point A to point B to do their work, I think that would be a huge thing. Because I did a study. I'm doing the Stanford MBA program, and one of the projects we had was, how are things going to change in the work from anywhere world? And we could only find one negative thing: was if you're not in the office, you might not get a serendipitous project thrown at you because you didn't overhear it, right? But but that's only if there's some people in the office and there's some people aren't in the office. But if everybody's out of the office, then even that goes away. So the elimination of something like commuting, which is like one of the worst things we can do to humans, is just a huge boon for everything else. So it
Mhm.
would be great if we could just have, any kind of travel that we do is really just for pleasure and not for business. And
Yeah.
that way, if we could just, make travel a pleasure thing only, I think that would be like a great thing that would have come out of this.
It's a great concept that you can really think about, just all the positive effects, even from an environmental perspective. That many,
Exactly.
vehicles on the road. And you started hearing that right early,
Mhm.
if I recall, that certain cities that used to have a particular fog or that kind of went away, right? And
Yeah.
so that's an interesting concept. Have you found? Yeah, because then it's still think humans need to see and touch and embrace and
Oh yeah, but they
physically.
can do it. They can do it for fun instead of having to
Yeah.
being forced to do it. I think that's the thing, is that in work has become, it used to be really monolithic. It's like leisure, commute, work, leisure,
Yeah.
and then commute again, right? And now it's like work, leisure, work, leisure, work, leisure, work, leisure, work, leisure, and we don't have to worry about, especially around here. I'm in Silicon Valley. People used to have 2-hour commutes each way, so you would
Yeah.
spend 4 hours a day sitting in a car. It would destroy marriages. It would destroy families. It would, destroy people's health. And now we're using that time more constructively to improve ourselves. So it's a good thing.
Yeah, I think there's more good than bad coming out of it for sure.
Yeah.
I wonder, yeah, I have really embraced, for me in our customer base, we're all over the nation. We have customers and partnerships in New York and Silicon Valley, one in Salt Lake City, and some across the globe in Sydney, Australia. And I got real comfortable with this. I mean, we were doing periodic traveling, but
Hmm.
never really significant or exclusive traveling. And we got very comfortable leaving the office because it was like, well, I almost felt guilty sitting in my office doing Zoom calls all day when all I was doing is waving to a handful of people,
Yeah.
right? I might as well let someone whose experience is more in person today and let them use that space. So we embraced it pretty quickly. It also, if I may, allowed us to go find talent that typically we maybe wouldn't have been comfortable to go hire.
Hmm.
So I've got 3 team members now out of Seattle that
Yeah.
I was personally comfortable hiring them at the time. I would have hired them anyway,
Hmm.
but it would have been it would have been a tougher sort of business proposition to make the case that that person can be effective remotely, if that makes sense. Now I used to tell the coworker, and this is back in the older model, that you're trying to only manage number one draft picks. You just want to work with number one draft picks all the time. And as a manager or a leader, you have to find and take the 5th or 7th round draft pick and groom that person into, or a 2nd or a 3rd round draft pick. And I still think that's somewhat true, but now I can go find wherever you're at. If you're a 1st round draft pick, you want to come work with the team and you like the culture, then come on in, let's do this,
Yeah.
and so now it's like, well, now the rules have changed. Now we can just go get top talent no matter where you're at, because we
Yeah.
have this new thing of how to make it work. It's
Yeah. And
really
you have to worry
interesting.
about it, and it's people who, and they have to live in these, used to have to live in these expensive areas to be near the jobs. And now you can live anywhere you want and still be able to work for anybody you want. And I think
Yeah.
that's a major breakthrough for a lot of, especially from a talent side. Because if you think about how it's basically exploded the talent marketplace now, because you can hire anybody from anywhere.
Hmm.
And if somebody wants to live somewhere in the middle of nowhere where it's inexpensive, they can live there and still work for Google, right?
Correct. Yeah. And I think there's been studies that people are working longer, more, they're putting more effort into the home workplace and putting
Yeah.
more time in, because it is, to your point, it's in, out, it's life happens, work happens, life happens, work, in no real, orderly fashion anymore.
Yeah.
And maybe the individuals that need that structure and need that focus, they're going to have to find something. And maybe there's a hybrid where might be 20% of your workforce ends up going to some office that might be shared at some point. I don't know. That'll be interesting, because maybe it's not
Ideal
for
solution.
everyone, but hopefully it's for the majority. Because I think it
Yeah.
is.
Ideal solution there would be, the people who need it can have it, and people who don't need it don't have it. So if you could just, make it flexible. So there's
Right.
some people who like the structure. Maybe they want to get away from their homes and be a little more focused, and they'll go in, but everybody else can work from anywhere.
Right. Yeah, no, I think it's definitely where I think it's trending. I think that's where it's going to end up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah.
So so let's talk about the future. 2031. It's 10 years out.
Wow. Yeah. I saw
Tell me what
I
the world's going to be like.
yeah, I am not the best 10-year vision person. I really like to think more what's right around the corner.
Mhm.
Um I, unless there's some zombie apocalypse,
Well, I hope not.
and in 2020 I was like, well, this has happened, this has happened. The only other things that, you know, or some major shift in climate that changes the way we have to live, it's pretty hard to ignore the fact that software is just going to take over the world.
Mhm.
And you know, you look at the Jetsons way back in the day, we're doing everything the Jetsons were
Pretty
portraying,
much,
right?
yeah.
I mean, pretty
Yeah.
much, right? And
Yeah.
so, I think people's consumer homes are going to be one of the most important things, if they're not already in people's lives, because there's just going to be so much more you're going to have to do at your home. Your home is
Yep.
going to be everything. I don't, it's, yeah, energy is going to be interesting. I think it's going to have to be some combo of sustainable new energy, yet still kind of relying on some methodology of fossil fuels. It's just, there's just going to have to be some form of hybrid until we can completely change that process, if that makes, I mean, you look at what's happening in Houston, and I mean,
Yeah,
it's not supposed to happen in Dallas and Houston, what's happening there, but obviously
exactly.
it happened, and we just don't have the infrastructure ready to do that. So, yeah, what I might predict is that everyone's, as a business, is gonna have kind of their own bank. They're gonna be
Hmm.
their own bank. Does that make sense? That's what I see, is there's just this new way of delivery is going to absolutely be more and more accepted. So not only do you have neo banks, digital banks, and or future sort of products and services, and you can go anything from Bitcoin to no more paper currency to, those are kind of obvious to me, but I think embedded financial services for an organization that might be in any industry, it's gonna be right baked in there.
Mm.
Um and it's going to be kind of the bank's role to reinvent how we deliver ours. And so I kind of look at our role as, well, if hypothetically, if the brick and mortar is the Blockbuster of movie deliveries, right? And then it went to, maybe today we're kind of somewhere between on-demand services through direct TV or cable,
Mhm.
or now it's kind of push a button on your phone and watch a movie through Netflix or all these sort of app-based type solutions. That's how I think banking is going through their journey right now. Is, all right, traditional bank is the Blockbuster. There's still a handful of people that are going to want that experience. It's going to be up to each organization to say, we're not going to do that anymore, or we're going to do it very limited, and it'll be interesting to see how that goes. But yeah, everything's going to be, now it's going to be absolute speeds everything. I
Well,
want
it's
to get
interesting.
paid now.
It's
I
interesting
got,
that you mentioned that. So,
yeah.
are you saying that at some point in the future we'll basically eliminate banks as a middleman, and then companies will just work with each other? I know that's happening in limited places now, but do you think it's going to be more like it's going to be more of a peer-to-peer model, and we'll eliminate the bank from the center?
I don't know. No, I don't think that happens. But well, it could. I mean,
Mm.
you're talking 10 years out in
Yeah,
today's pace of technology. So even how we looked at 10 years ago, maybe a year ago from now, does that make sense?
yeah.
That pace has already,
Oh yeah, yeah.
it's absolutely incredible. Um, I think, and there will be a tremendous amount of consolidation in banking.
Hmm.
Um, I think today there's less than 5,000, well under 2,000, I think, is where it ends up going. Um, tech, if soft, so as a bank, we need to be as banks, as the banking community, if I'm speaking on all banks, we have to think about, how do we be in this fabric of, not at necessarily delivering, but more of an infrastructure play, in
Yeah.
terms of how we can be part of that, and not do it in such a way where we have to be in control of it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Um,
So platformization, right? It's basically you're
yeah,
turning yourselves into a platform, and you're allowing people to run things over top of it. So, for example, if company A wants to pay company B, they can just do it through the platform instead of having to deposit
yes,
funds in your bank. But they
yeah,
just use you as an API, and you're still part of the framework,
mhm,
but you don't necessarily need to be in their face as a brand.
100%. Yeah, I think the
Yeah.
brand importance, I think, is going to be less and less more for banks,
Yeah.
and hopefully what we can do behind the scenes is be supportive of the other brands that people are passionate about. They're lifestyle brands. No one gets really super excited about a banking brand anymore. Not sure if they ever
Yeah.
did, to be honest, but if I'm super passionate about a lifestyle and then there are brands that are conducive to my lifestyle, then that's what I'm passionate about. And if banks
Yeah.
want to be a part of that, then they have to start serving their products and services in a different way. It's
Yeah.
really what we're all about. I remember I'm a big fan of the way Elon Musk thinks, and I listened to a couple things that resonate. And he talks very passionately about AI and where it's at and where it's headed, and versus the human capacity. And um, he made a comment that said something like, "Well, if we can't beat AI, we might as well join them a little bit."
Yeah.
There's some statement he makes there about he has this vision of, I think it's like this neurotransmitter that connects to your
Yeah. The
digital.
Neuralink.
The Neuralink. There you go. You know more about it than I do. Cool. But he said something like that, and not a quote, but it was completely what I thought about, like for us, fintech, right? If we can't beat fintech, then we have to be a part of it. We have to have
Yep.
banks thinking like we have a lot of fintechs thinking like a bank. There's very few banks that are thinking like a fintech.
Yep.
And
Yep.
together we got to solve that. We got to solve that together. So our goal is to be a part of it. Our goal is to be able to serve the brands that people are passionate about. On the other side of that coin, we hope that if there's some great financial institutions that maybe don't know how to do maybe some of the things that we've thought of, and maybe we can sort of plug in other banks into this platform that we've talked about, and help them come along for the ride as well that way too. So we're thinking that way as well. I think there's almost two customer base here for how we envision the world, and it'll be interesting. Hopefully there's no more parameters around you can do business here but you can't do business here type situation. So if our customer base wants to go into another country, and they should just be able to they shouldn't have to make any adjustments.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it needs to be global. We're turning it into we're becoming a global piece of humanity now.
Yes, 100% agree with you. And what I would love to solve, this is sort of my moonshot idea, is that if there's a way, I think everyone should have access to financial services no matter where you're at. And I don't care. And from a humanitarian perspective, there are parts of this world that do not have that infrastructure in place. They do not have access to that. And so if we can help solve that as the greater purpose through whatever we're building, or a combination of us and some other companies that want to go solve that, that would be amazing. That's kind of maybe the last, maybe we should be solving for that today, but what we are building today has that sort of in mind, that capability, that scale. Yes.
Yeah. We need to look at it for all humans, basically, not just
no matter where you're physically at, right?
Exactly.
No matter where you're physically at. I agree. Yeah.
All right. Well, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much. And I'll put your contact information in the show notes. So if you could send me your bio and any other information, and I'll set that up. So
yeah,
it was great talking with you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you too. Yeah. If you ever want to talk again, let me know. It was fun.
Definitely. Talk to you soon.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.